online can't hear you.
Okay, I will do it. Okay, I'll start. Thanks. Hi, everyone. This is very strange, but thank you. I want to start off first by acknowledging that today is the 3-year anniversary of Breonna Taylor's death, and I want to send my love and thoughts to her family on a day that I'm sure is really tough, and acknowledge everyone in this room, including folks on the council who fought to make meaningful change since then. And then I also want to thank you all so much for taking what looks like might be 4 hours to interview us all. I appreciate that each of you is taking the diligence needed to make this decision with all the information needed. So who am I? I'm Taylor McGovern, a lifelong resident of District 8, an advocate for accessible higher education at U of L, a proud JCPS graduate, an enthusiastic member of my neighborhood, a mom of 2 kiddos aged 5 and 6, and an excited candidate for this vacant council seat. Now, why exactly do I want to represent District 8? First, I think representation matters in legislative bodies. The Metro Council currently has only 9 women serving out of 26 seats, and now that Cassie has vacated, none of those 9 people are mothers of young children. In fact, in the candidate pool before you, there were more men with the last name Meyer than there were working moms until today. Some of them withdrew. This speaks volumes about how inaccessible these spaces are for working mothers who want to be part of the legislative body of our city. You can see the impact that Cassie had as a working mom on council, and only the second woman ever to represent District 8. She passed the first ordinance guaranteeing paid parental leave for city employees, and she created the council's first women's caucus. It's so very important for young people growing up to see that, and to see that our government cares about that and about representation. My daughter deserves to see people like her mom on council. Second, I have not only the qualifications, but also the dedication to serve my district. This neighborhood, the residents of which are lovingly called weird, independent, and proud, made me who I am today. There's a mural at the end of my street that says that. I'm a fierce advocate for my weird community, an independent change maker who's not afraid to think creatively about how to solve my neighbors' problems, and I'm so very proud of the Highlands for our continued commitment to show up for one another. You've read my resume, so I don't want to rehash that, but I want to close with this. I want to let you all know that I'm not only ready to serve, but I intend to stay. I want to dedicate my time and attention to this community, and I want to be the council person who's known for listening, learning about issues, and showing up whenever needed. Impact comes at the hyper-local level, which you all know, and I want to stay with District 8 as long as the people will have me. It is, after all, the people who matter, and when we center our community, anything is possible.
Thank you. Councilman Baker.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm right here. Thank you for being here. As someone who just went through the process, if you could surmise, you talked about dedication. What separates you from the other candidates? And also, can you talk about your 3 most important visions for the district? Thank you.
Big question. Okay. So I have gotten to know the other candidates throughout this process, and they're all really wonderful, amazing people. I think you would be great with any of them, honestly. But I will say I am a lifelong resident of this district. I know where Highland Coffee is. I have an Ear Ecstasy bumper sticker. It is part of who I am as a person, and I think that knowledge of the community is really important when serving. And also, I just want to say that, well, you asked me about, I'll move on to the 3 issues, right, that are the top ones for my district. That's what you asked.
The question was, what separates you from the other candidates in your eyes, and then also the 3 top things for, for your vision.
So the top 3 things that I think District 8 needs, in my opinion, is a focus on reinvestment in public safety, local businesses, and then also affordable housing. And so what I mean about public safety is I want to invest in an infrastructure of care that lifts up our community and gives them what they need to be successful. And then with local businesses, you know, that's kind of the heart of the Highlands. There's a lot of local businesses there. I want to make sure that I'm supportive of those folks in whatever way I can be and leverage the power I have as a council person to help them. And for affordable housing, I think, is a crisis in our city, in District 8, in the country, so it's not foreign to any of you, I assume. But I would want to make sure that the people who work in the local businesses in District 8 can also afford to live there. You know, that if I want them to be able to live there on minimum wage. And we have to do things, you know, as a government body to ensure that people can access affordable housing in my district, in the city, and broader. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Councilman Rashad. Also on the
Yes,
left.
good evening. Right to your left. All right. My question is, as a council member, how would you address the Department of Justice's recent report regarding Louisville Metro and LMPD?
Yeah, sure. So that report, I think, to many people who have been marginalized, wasn't surprising. And so I would obviously, I'm hopeful that our mayor and that this governing body can abide by the recommendations set forth by the DOJ. I think it's really important that we do that, right? And I think part of that is investing in that infrastructure of care that I mentioned earlier, which includes things like affordable housing, universal pre-K, access to mental health counseling, access to addiction treatment, those types of things that prevent crime before a person ever even has to encounter a police officer. So those things are in the DOJ recommendations, so I just hope our city can follow through on them.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hawkins is going to be behind you on the left.
Hello, how are you? I love your energy.
Thanks.
Energy's great. As we all know from the Department of Justice report, it was brought to all of our attention that the blacks were targeted. Okay, of course now that's not a secret. Blacks are now moving to Bardstown Road to club because they were targeted in the West End. How do you plan to combat that with the blacks coming onto Bardstown Road, going into their clubs? How do you plan to handle that? Because that's what's been going on.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's really important that we follow the DOJ recommendations. And that takes the mayor, but it also takes our legislative body to enact the changes that we need in LMPD so that marginalized people are not victims of police violence, for sure. Yeah.
Great answer.
Yeah.
Councilman Reed.
Thank you, Mr. President. You work for U of L in admissions, correct?
I do.
So one of the issues that I see is that some of our best and brightest leave this city, and I know that you see it all the time. What proposals or what would you suggest that we do as a body to keep some of our best people from leaving to go to Indianapolis or Nashville or New York or wherever?
Yeah. Very fair question. And also, Councilman Reed, I loved your cat. And the last 2 hearing appointments, I'm sad that you're here because I kind of wanted to see the cat. Sorry, that's a tangent. But yeah, this is a thing that I talk and think about a lot because as a young person, I did come back to live in Louisville and it was enticing to me. But the things that did that for me were jobs, right? And jobs that pay well, which I think we need to focus on, helping people get access to jobs that pay a living wage or more. And then affordable housing. Obviously, I think those are really important things as well. If you can't afford to live in the city, then you're not going to stay in the city, especially if you don't have the wage to afford living here. And then investing in our local businesses, investing in our culture, lifting those things up and saying, these are the great things about living in District 8 or living in the city of Louisville in general are really important to grabbing those young folks and making sure they stay. Yeah.
Councilman Owen.
So building affordable housing in District 8 is a great idea. NIMBYism is a big thing in all of our districts. And how would you go about convincing your District 8 residents that building affordable housing in your district, in their district, is the right thing to do?
So I don't want to say that NIMBYism doesn't exist in the Highlands because I know it does. However, we've had some really great conversations in my neighborhood association about Mid-City Mall. And the Tyler Park Neighborhood Association, where Mid-City Mall is, is advocating strongly for affordable housing to be included in the new development there. And so I think there's a push from the Highlands residents to include affordable housing here. I'm saying here, but there in District 8, because we like the diversity in our neighborhood and we want people to have different incomes and to also be able to live and work in the same place. And that also goes back to multimodal transportation. The Highlands is really big about environmentalism and advocating for biking and taking the TARC and walking places. Well, if you don't have a car, that you need to be able to live by where you work. And so we have to make it affordable. Now, having said all of that, if somebody did come in and say something that was a NIMBY phrase, I would just try to lay out for them the evidence of why it's good to have people living in your neighborhood who can afford to live there. We don't want to all be living in a bubble of the same, same economic status. So that's what I would try to do in my best efforts.
Councilman Batchin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Ms. McGovern. I have multiple questions, but I'm going to stick with the first one. So safety in your district is obviously a priority. How do you look to address those safety issues? Just go with that one first.
Yeah, for sure. I actually have a personal story about this. I live on Beechwood Avenue, and in this very calendar year, we've had 3 shootings, and one of which was a homicide. And that was really, that's very traumatic for the victims in those situations, but it was always it was also very traumatic for the residents of our street. After the third one, our neighbors got together and said, how can we help solve this problem? And one of us talked to law enforcement, one of us talked to alcohol and beverage control, one of us talked to the neighborhood association, one of us talked to Cassie, and then at the next neighborhood association, we all got together and we got hooked up to the business owner in whose parking lot some of this was happening. They're also not a fan of it, right? And so it's that community of stakeholders that has the real power to make big change in terms of public safety. And that is what I would want to continue as a council person, is making sure those people were in communication with one another so that public safety can be worked on in an effective, communicative, neighborly way.
Thank you.
Councilman Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. President. So in response to Councilman Rashad's question about the DOJ report, you mentioned things that were even in addition to the recommendations that they had suggested. My question for you is, what areas of the budget would you look to cut to pay for those things?
Yeah. So first, there are some things in that DOJ report that we can do that are free. Opening up the contract negotiations for LMPD, that's one thing we can do. It costs no money. So there are things, and that's in the recommendations, right, of the DOJ report. So there are things we can do that are free. But I also think when you invest in those social safety nets, it also, and the DOJ did recommend that, right? Training for LMPD officers. That kind of thing that you're investing in ahead of time reduces the interaction of residents with police. And so I think, it's not really an if then, it's not an either or, but rather a both and. It benefits. If you invest in a social safety net, it benefits everyone, and then you don't have to invest in all of the things that the DOJ is recommending. But the DOJ did recommend things on there that were about crime prevention and about preventing people's interaction with the police. So I would, yeah.
Thank you very much. You've got 1 minute for a closing.
Okay, so I watched the Oscars last night and everyone was thanking people, and it inspired me to be grateful because I do think that's important. So I want to thank you all for your dedication to your communities. It's really admirable the way you all show up for your communities, and I hope to be you one day, right? I want to thank my kids for the constant reminder of the joy and the little things in life. I want to thank my husband and my parents for their consistent support throughout all of this. They have definitely dealt with me crying a bunch. I want to thank the NCFO, SEIU, for my very first endorsement ever. I will stand in solidarity with labor today and always. I want to thank Emerge Kentucky for the training that they're giving me as a candidate, and also for the Sisterhood of Women who have been so supportive of me. I want to thank my mom friends for helping me and cheering me on in the background, even though their kids are mostly sick right now. My neighbors, friends, and other family for encouraging me to run for office. I'm doing this for y'all. Tonight's not the end, it's just the beginning, so I'll see you out there.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, y'all.